I'm Graham Mack, and in our series about the changing world of work, we've looked at critical actions that need to be taken. In this program, we'll look at organisational redesign and what's needed. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Tony Miller, international consultant on productivity and change. He's worked with most of the top organisations in the world in 36 different countries. He's the author of 26 books and numerous white papers, all of which are available on Google Scholar. Welcome, Dr. Tony Miller.
Thank you, Graham.
Can we just talk about the historic aspects of this first?
Organisational design is quite a fascinating area. I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
The organisations as we know it today, probably 95% of them, when do you think that organisational design was made?
Okay, well, I'm going to say the 1960s.
Okay, not far out. It was 1776. And the organisational design as we know it today, or most companies use, was designed by Adam Smith, and it was called a pyramidal structure. And Adam Smith, in the Industrial Revolution, laid out organisations so you had the stupid people at the bottom, the less stupid people one layer up, the supervisors, that's where the word supervision came from, who used to have to watch them, one layer up, and then you had junior managers, middle managers, senior managers, the most senior manager, the big cheese, the biggest cheese, right till you got to the top. And many organisations that I've worked in have had depths of layers that have been 14 deep. It's hard to believe, and they still exist. They're all over the place. And HR love it because, you have a career path, you have a pay structure that is layered. So if you're in layer 7, it runs from this amount to this amount, and everybody's very, very comfortable with it. The big issue is with the passing of time, it's absolutely useless for today's environment. And, with home working and other great changes, it's just, it beggars belief that anybody's using it still. But, everybody's comfortable with it, like an old armchair. So nobody wants to particularly change it. In real design terms, the biggest breakthrough was a man called William Shockley. And William Shockley was the man who invented the transistor and later on, the silicon chip. And William Shockley only employed bright people. And no matter how good you were or how good you said you were, Shockley said, you want to join me? You're going to be tested. And we're going to test you. We're going to profile you. No matter how good you think you are, I want to know exactly how good you are. And he recruited people for his business, which was immensely successful. And he got loads of contracts with the American Army and special development areas. And he was in on the silicon chip right from the word go. He might say that he invented it. It's always a bit of mystery who actually invented the silicon chip. But anyway, Shockley had a different way of running the business. There were no rules, there were no regulations. There was no starting time or finishing time. You just had to do your business. And there were no managers, there were no supervisors, there was no training, and there was no HR department. And he was immensely successful. And he was the first man to move to what we now know as Silicon Valley. Now, Shockley's model was very, very interesting. And it wasn't long before one of the guys splintered off to start his own business. A little tiny business, you may not have heard of it, called Intel.
Yeah.
And Intel was run by Bill Noyce. And when Bill Noyce built Intel, he decided that there weren't going to be any rules, there weren't going to be any regulations, there weren't going to be any managers, didn't want any supervisors, no HR, and very, very little training. And Intel was a massive success. Then along comes Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the real rebel, and he wasn't going to do anything anybody else did. But you couldn't get into Apple unless you were tested and you had a profile. And there were no managers, there were no supervisors, there were no rules, there were no regulations. And of course, Apple was America's first $1 trillion company. Just in case anybody that's viewing this is likely to say, "Oh, this won't work." Then along comes Bill Gates. And what does Bill Gates do? Let me think. We're only going to test people to come into the organization, have a very flat organization. We're not going to have managers, supervisors, too many rules and regulations. We're going to be different. And of course, Microsoft has become a absolutely mega company. Then who came along next? Well, Sergey Brin and Larry Page from Google. Now, Sergey Brin and Larry Page are probably the people who've got this off pat the best. No managers, no rules, no regulations, no supervisors. And they only employ really, really, really talented people. And, their success is, they are just a mega company. And to this day, it's harder to get into Google than it is to get into Harvard University.
That's interesting, because the thing about those top schools like Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Cambridge and whatever, it's not necessarily the education you get there, it's how strict the conditions are to get there. It's the getting there. So to have a company that's got stricter rules than Harvard University, they really are picking the creme de la creme, and that's what makes the difference.
Then along comes Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook. I'm going to do everything different, completely different. No more of the old school, I'm absolutely going to be different. So what does he do? Well, he has testing and profiling before you can get into the company. And he employs the smartest people. No rules, no regulations. And he's the guy who's going to have 75% less office space. So he's going to launch off big time into home working. And then you've got Jeff Bezos from Amazon. Does exactly the same. Only he has 300,000 robots working for him who don't require a manager, a supervisor, rules and regulations. They're just fine on their own. So that model, although it's so successful, hasn't really taken off because people are still happy with the old model, the old pyramidal model that goes back to 1776 and Adam Smith. So what we've got now, we have got the opportunity with home working, reduced office space, different ways of doing things, to really look at the organization and say, what design do we really want to work for us? And without any doubt, the design that you would need to go to, I think if you were in the public sector, they couldn't cope with this at all. But they could go for what's called an asymmetrical organization. So the whole organization isn't built on the pyramid structure. It's just much more flexible. They could do that, and they could do that today. I think for other organizations, now is an excellent opportunity to look at how the people like Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin and Larry Page and the rest are running their businesses. If you employ smart people, you don't need rules and regulations if you think about it. They're smart enough to work out what you can do and what you can't do. All the rules and regulations are really written for the stupid people. But they are. The poor performers, the people who can't work out what time of the day it is, except they must arrive late and they mustn't do too much work. And everything is written in infinite detail in the staff manual. And it's all written for poor performers. It's not written for talented people. So, we have a great opportunity to rewrite the conditions of service, redesign the organization, and design it for the people we really want, who are, talented people.
So that's what's driving the need for organizations to redesign themselves? The fact that other businesses are doing it, and you're going to get left behind?
Yeah, there's that, Graham, and there's also the fact that there is massive financial savings in it. There's a saying in psychology: if you treat people like children, they behave like children. Treat people like adults, they behave like adults. And I think that's the world that we're going towards right now, where we've got all the technology there, we've got AI moving in, doing more and more of the easier work, so to speak. And we've got this golden opportunity now to look at our organisation and say, what do we want our organisation to look like, feel like, and for it to work. And those organisations are a joy to be in. They really, really are phenomenal. And what you hear in those type of organisations is, yes, I can do that.
Mm.
And people will just make decisions and do things.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get into the pyramidal organisation, they go, you need to talk to my manager. And could you email him, because he's very, very busy and very, very hard to talk to. And and this sort of stuff really is really in the past. It's finished. So organisations now should be looking, particularly if they right size, they should say, well, okay, we've right sized the organisation. What can we do now to create an organisation that will take us into the future, that will really, really work for the employees and us as employers? Mark Zuckerberg, by the way, if you want a bit of background information, it's quite interesting. He, in the office he works, which is mainly computer screens, as you would probably gather, you can't pick out his desk. He's just got a regular desk with a regular screen, and it's in a regular line with everybody else.
It's not a corner office overlooking a massive
No, no, no,
park or
no, no.
river or
It
something.
doesn't need all that. Doesn't need all that. He recognizes that what he wants is people to work and feel comfortable, and he doesn't need people to recognize that he's Mark Zuckerberg. He's quite happy to just walk in, sit down, and do his work.
So what evidence is there that this is happening now?
Well, the evidence is, COVID-19's driven this, and COVID-19 will force organizations, I think, to do right sizing. And if you're right sizing the organization, why only have 50% of the benefit? Why don't you do the organizational redesign and get the whole package in one go? And if you don't do it, you're very, very likely to be left behind, because running right up behind us now is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is just going to start sucking up all the jobs that people should be able to do and can never do properly.
Because they've made so many advances. I spoke to a guy who's a gamer, and he was telling me, I interviewed him for a radio show, and he was telling me they've now got chess tournaments where computers play computers. So if the AI is that advanced, what else can they do,
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the days of wondering whether computers are more intelligent than us has gone. I mean, that happened in 2019. If you take a quantum computer, which is run on artificial intelligence, there's no way you can either keep up with its processing speed, but now they've got this ability to think, and that is the big, big difference. And we are just not in the same league as them. So what the computer should be doing are things that we can't do and things that we can't solve. I mean, I can't understand why nobody hasn't really got artificial intelligence working on COVID-19. It's probably because there's just not enough data, historical data. But I mean, you can you name it, artificial intelligence can do it. It can speak, it can hear, it can see. And, very, very recently, the US Air Force have announced that they've now got fighter planes that are completely controlled by artificial intelligence. There's not a 17-year-old with a joystick sitting in his bedroom controlling the plane. That, it's the plane, once it takes off, is exactly on its own and battle ready. And they've pitched their best fighter pilots against this in simulations. Can't beat it.
Wow.
And there we are. Welcome to the new world.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's not worry about let's not worry about that. The issue is it's a big opportunity now, and the opportunity is to redesign the organization and maximize on home working, working differently, and using talented people. Because the world for talented people has got to be different. Otherwise, they just won't stay.
Yeah.
They just move because
Yeah.
they can move.
Yeah.
Poor performer can't move. You know, the poor performers in, say, in the public sector, been in there all his life. Well, where's he going to go? Even McDonald's wouldn't have him, you know, or her. So, you know, they're stuck being miserable and holding the organisation back. They're just not going to change. And in many countries, you know, you've got employment law that doesn't let you get rid of them either. So,
Yeah.
you know, they'll say, well, hang on, he's been with us for 10 years. 10 years loyalty. Yes, 10 years stealing 7 hours a day consistently and rubbishing the organisation and requiring lots of training, which they never put into practice. So, you know, they are the ultimate thief, I suppose, aren't they, poor performers?
And there's a square footage saving as well as a result of organisational redesign.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. As soon as you move to, you know, large scale home working, there's been loads of studies on this. I mean, I'm not just dreaming this stuff up. Sanchez and two others put a paper together at the end of last year, and they reckon that from the study they did, that across the world, 1 in 5 people could work at home.
1 in 5, as many as that. Wow. Wow.
So, you know,
Yeah.
welcome to the new world of working in Starbucks, the public library, or on a beach.
So what do you think is the average space saving that companies can expect then?
Well, I
Will
think
it reduce by a fifth?
well, I think on the first cut it'd be 25%. And then I think after that, I think you'll be moving to 50% quite rapidly.
Right. Right. So will that lead to cheaper office space because there'll be a glut of office space? But the rules of supply and demand, will that bring the price down?
You've only got to look around any big city now. Getting office space is not a problem. There is masses of it. And certainly the last time I was in London, which was only a few days ago, if you walk around the city, there are to let signs up everywhere on offices. And there's parts of the city now which look, you know, a bit of a disaster. There's so much empty office space, and it's going to get worse. Well, what will happen is they're converted to flats.
It's funny you should say that. I spoke to a builder. I spoke to Andy Stevens from Eclipse, and he says a lot of the guys he knows are working in London converting office space into flats. So that could mean
Yeah,
there's a glut of affordable homes in London. Bizarre, which is
yeah,
a bizarre
sure, for
concept, but
sure.
it could happen.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. But if you think about you think about home working, if you think about the benefits that it's given you,
Mm.
you know, financial benefits, they're really really good.
Mm.
And I think if you're the sort of person that likes a bit of flexibility in your work, you know, then that gives you everything you need. But in the future, I think anybody that works at home will have to be profiled. You'll have to have a really good look at their profile. You want these conscientious people who are open to change, and they're the people who will take us forward.
Dr. Tony Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.